September 2024. A hotel room overlooking Manhattan. Sean Combs, one of the most powerful men in entertainment history, sits with his attorney, preparing for what he believes will be the fight of his life. A camera is rolling. Combs knows it's there. He's been filming himself for decades, since he was 19 years old, according to his own team. But here's what Combs didn't know. The footage he was recording for his own redemption story would end up in the hands of his greatest enemy. 6 days later, federal agents would arrest him. 3 months later, 21.8 million people would watch that footage on Netflix, in a documentary executive produced by 50 Cent. The question that has consumed the entertainment industry ever since: how did they get the tape? Combs' team calls it theft. Netflix calls it legal acquisition. And somewhere in between lies a mystery involving a videographer, a freelancer, and 3 days that changed everything. If stories about power, betrayal, and the battle over who controls the narrative interest you, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Drop a comment. Whose version do you believe? The footage opens Sean Combs' The Reckoning with devastating intimacy. Combs sits in a Manhattan hotel room, speaking on the phone with his attorney Mark Agnifilo. The camera captures everything. Things are happening, and it's like, "I want to fight for my life," Combs says. "I want to fight for justice, for not guilty. I want to have a life to be able to live. It's really going to be hard for me to take more hits than I've taken, and God forbid get in front of a jury and have a chance." His attorney responds with reassurance. "You didn't do anything wrong. You've handled this with complete honor." Combs' reply cuts through the room. "I don't think it's working. We're losing." Then comes the line that would define the documentary's narrative. "We need to find someone who will work with us, who has worked in the dirtiest of dirty businesses." This footage was captured with Combs' knowledge. He had hired videographers to document him. He was building his own story, but that story was never released. Instead, it appeared in a documentary produced by his rival, and Combs says he never authorized it. On December 1st, 2025, 1 day before the documentary's scheduled release, Netflix's chief legal officer David Hyman received a 4-page cease-and-desist letter. The letter made explosive allegations. First, that the pre-arrest footage had been stolen and was never authorized for release. Second, that the documentary was corporate retaliation. According to Combs' attorneys, Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos had proposed a documentary about Combs in 2023, but Combs rejected it when Sarandos insisted he give up creative control. Third, that Netflix chose 50 Cent as executive producer specifically because of his personal vendetta against Combs. The choice of Mr. Jackson to produce the program was Netflix's vindictive response to that rejection, the letter stated, an attempt by Netflix and Mr. Sarandos to ensure a one-sided character assassination rather than a balanced and accurate portrayal. The letter warned, "Mr. Combs has not hesitated to take legal action against media entities and others who violate his rights, and he will not hesitate to do so against Netflix." Netflix had less than 24 hours to respond. Netflix didn't blink. On December 2nd, 2025, the documentary released as scheduled, and Netflix issued a direct rebuttal to every claim in Combs' cease-and-desist letter. The claims being made about Sean Combs, "The Reckoning," are false, a Netflix spokesperson stated. On the corporate retaliation allegation, The project has no ties to any past conversations between Sean Combs and Netflix. On the stolen footage claim, the footage of Combs leading up to his indictment and arrest were legally obtained. On the hit piece accusation, this is not a hit piece or an act of retribution. Curtis Jackson is an executive producer but does not have creative control. No one was paid to participate. Director Alexandria Stapleton addressed the footage controversy directly. It came to us, we obtained the footage legally and have the necessary rights. We moved heaven and earth to keep the filmmaker's identity confidential. She added something that would prove significant. One thing about Sean Combs is that he's always filming himself, and it's been an obsession throughout the decades. The battle lines were drawn, but neither side had answered the central question. How exactly did the footage get from Combs' team to Netflix? On December 10, 2025, 8 days after the documentary's release, a new voice entered the controversy. Michael Oberles, who described himself as Sean Combs' documentarian, released a statement to Rolling Stone. Oberles said he had worked with Combs since 2019 and had been working on a project profiling Sean Diddy Combs for over 2 years. But here's where his account diverged from the speculation. The footage in question was not released by me or anyone authorized to handle Sean Combs's materials, Oberles stated. It was by a third party who covered for me for 3 days while I was out of state. He directly contradicted earlier reports suggesting the footage was released due to a payment dispute. This incident had nothing to do with any fee dispute or contract issue, Oberles said. The actions of the parties involved reflect the lack of integrity every storyteller should uphold. Taking footage intended for our project to advance a narrative that was not our own is both unethical and unacceptable. So, according to Oberles, he didn't release the footage. It wasn't about money. A freelancer, hired to cover for him for 3 days, apparently did. The identity of that freelancer remains confidential. Here's where the story gets complicated. Oberles says the footage was released without authorization by a temporary freelancer. He calls it unethical and unacceptable. Netflix says the footage was legally obtained, and they have the necessary rights. Combs' team calls it stolen footage that was never authorized for release. Combs' former publicist, Rob Shooter, offered yet another perspective. He claimed that Combs always had photographers and video crews trailing him everywhere all the time, but because he was cheap, he refused to do formal contracts. According to Shooter, Diddy never paid the videographer, and he never had a signed contract. But Oberles explicitly denied this. This incident had nothing to do with any fee dispute or contract issue. So who's telling the truth? The legal reality may be murky. If there was no formal contract, who actually owned the footage? If a freelancer was hired by Oberles, did that freelancer have the right to sell what they captured? Did Netflix conduct proper due diligence before acquiring the material? These questions remain unanswered. No lawsuit over the footage has been filed, at least not publicly. The documentary continues to stream. Whatever the legal merits of the dispute, the documentary achieved exactly what 50 Cent predicted. Within 6 days of its December 2nd release, Sean Combs' The Reckoning was viewed 21.8 million times, making it the second most watched Netflix title that week, behind only Stranger Things Season 5. The cease-and-desist letter didn't stop it. The allegations of stolen footage didn't slow it down. If anything, the controversy may have fueled interest. 50 Cent, who had spent 2 decades trolling Combs on social media, had turned that rivalry into the most watched documentary of the month, and he wasn't subtle about it. When fans pointed out that his ABC News interview promoting the documentary aired on a channel available in federal prisons where Combs is currently serving his sentence, 50 Cent responded on Instagram, "I thought about it. What's wrong with that?" The footage controversy exists within a larger story. Sean Combs was convicted in July 2025 of 2 counts of transportation for the purposes of prostitution under the Mann Act. He was acquitted of the more serious charges of racketeering and sex trafficking. In October 2025, he was sentenced to 50 months in federal prison. He is currently incarcerated at Fort Dix in New Jersey. His lawyers have announced an appeal. More than 70 civil lawsuits remain pending against him. The documentary, with its intimate pre-arrest footage, offered viewers something the trial didn't, a window into Combs' mindset as his world collapsed around him. Whether that window was legally obtained or stolen depends on who you believe. As of December 2025, the footage dispute remains unresolved. No lawsuit has been filed over the footage itself, though Combs has filed a $100 million defamation suit against NBC Universal over a separate documentary. Michael Oberles has not identified the freelancer who allegedly released the footage. Netflix has not disclosed how they acquired it beyond saying it was legal. Combs' team continues to call it stolen. Netflix continues to stream it. And 50 Cent continues to post about Combs on social media, reminding his millions of followers that sometimes the person you dismissed as a troll ends up telling your story to the world. The central irony remains. Combs spent decades filming himself, building an archive for his own narrative. That archive, or at least part of it, ended up in the hands of his enemy. He was building his own documentary. Someone else finished it. In September 2024, Sean Combs looked into a camera and said he wanted to fight for his life. He didn't know that camera would become a weapon, pointed back at him. The legal questions may never be fully answered. The footage controversy may fade into the larger story of Combs' conviction and imprisonment. But one question lingers. In an age when everyone is always recording, who really controls the story? Combs thought he did. He was wrong. If this story moved you, subscribe for more investigations into the stories that shape our culture. Drop a comment. Do you think the footage was stolen or legally obtained? And what happens when someone's own cameras become the evidence against them?